Oh, hello everybody and welcome to I Follow Roads. This is a different show than other aviation shows. It's about following roads. Now we know there's a lot of good shows out there. We've got Josh doing how to fly airplanes with Aviation 101. We've got Juan Brown, Jason Miller, Steve Thorne, and Flight Chops, which I've watched a lot of. In the Hangar with Christy Wong and Dan Milliken. Probable Cause with Dan Greider. All great shows. But this show is a little different. On this show, we're encouraging pilots to follow roads because I sincerely believe that it will improve the safety record of general aviation. Now I know some of you follow roads some of the time, but I'm not sure you've made a science out of it like I have. I know that if I ever have another engine failure, that I will be able to say, I am over a road. Or, oh look, I'm over an airport. How nice. Can you say the same? Probably not. You might be over a forest, or you might be over a lake, or you might be over some very rough terrain, or you might be over a desert. What are you going to do? If you don't know what you're going to do, then stay tuned because I'm going to run through about 30 different shows and show you and convince you that following roads is really the way to go. It's very safe. It'll take a while though for this philosophy to worm its way into your brain, and you're going to have some resistance to it. Why are you going to have resistance? Well, you want to get somewhere quickly. That's what planes are to a lot of people. You know, they say there's nothing worse than the gas you could have loaded into the gas tank of your plane. There's nothing worse than using that longer runway that you could have used when you took off on a short runway and things didn't go very well. You can also ask the controller or choose yourself the runway that has a better headwind for you. Remember what happened to Mike Patey and his airplane Draco. He didn't want to bother the tower controller by asking him if he could have a different runway to take off from that had a better headwind. He didn't want to bother the guy. So he said, it'll be okay. And he took off with his wife and friend in the back, and the whole plane flipped over and he destroyed $1 million airplane. Well, there's one more thing. There's nothing worse than that road that you could have been flying over when you weren't, when you needed it, when the engine failed, when weather closed in around you, or you became ill in the plane and needed to set down right away, or, lo and behold, you ran out of gas, or you had just taken off in high density altitude, the air was thin, you're barely flying over the treetops, you're pulling back on the yoke because you don't want to hit the top of the trees, but the plane doesn't want to fly well on the hot day that you're flying in, and so you crash into the forest. Well, had you been following a road, you would have been able to go, I'm not flying today. This plane does not like these conditions. I'm going to set it down on this road and we're going to save our lives. So anytime you're in a situation where you don't want to go down, you don't want to lower the nose because you don't like what might be below you because it might chop your plane to pieces, if you knew there was a road there instead, you'd be much more likely to push forward. Pulling back on the yoke is one of the most dangerous things a pilot can ever do because your airspeed gets too low, then one of your wings stalls, and it quickly flips the plane and down you go, and it's over in seconds. This error is done a lot. And I think that by following roads, pilots will have more confidence to push forward on the yoke. If we begin to follow roads when we fly, every crash or inadvertent landing will be on a road. Every emergency landing will be on a road, whether it was fuel starvation induced or mechanically induced. And no more will we hear crashed in a forested area. This is not for backcountry STOL aircraft with big wheels. They can land almost anywhere and in very short distances. This is not for IFR flights. This is not for twin engine airplanes. This is for the majority of the general aviation fleet, which is single engine aircraft. But do engines really fail? 15% of all accidents are for mechanical reasons. And of that 50%, 15%, 60% of those are the power plant, our famous Lycoming and Continental engines. There's about 2 per week. And I'll be doing some shows on my thoughts about different engines as well. I'll be flying around with you in the RV-12 here. It has a Rotax 100 horsepower, and I'll talk about why I like that engine. Only 1% of accidents are fatal, which is kind of good. But road flying can save engine failure accidents because you're going to be less likely to stall if you can push the nose forward and land on a road. All fuel starvation accidents would come to an end. They wouldn't end in accidents. They would end in landings on roads. And we've watched Paul Bertorelli on YouTube, and he showed us a lot of videos of airplanes landing successfully on roads. And he's talked about how to do that. We will too. If weather closes in around you and you can still remain in visual flight rules, if you can get yourself to a road, or if you can get yourself down under the clouds over a road, then you'll land on that road and you'll be just fine. But when a person gets into a flying situation where the weather is closing in around them and they end up crashing out in the country or in a forest, there's just no reason for that. They could have been over a road. It takes longer to follow roads. But don't you enjoy flying like me? I don't mind if I'm in the air a little longer. How much longer? It's usually about 20%. I've done the math. Besides, what's your rush? You ever hear the story about the guy? He kept getting faster and faster airplanes, spending more and more money. And finally, he got himself a real speedy Mooney, and he got to his destination a half an hour faster than he used to get there in his Cessna. Do you think that he got to the FBO and said, you know, I've gotten here a half an hour sooner. I think I'll sit on the couch and put my feet up and read an article in a magazine and have a cup of coffee? No, he didn't do that. He quickly got his bags, he threw it over his shoulder, he got out, he took the taxi, he went to the meeting, nothing changed. So it really doesn't hurt to take your time getting somewhere. Shortcuts, taking shortcuts usually comes from get-there-itis. And it's due to our concept of what airplanes are for. We think they're for speed. We think they're for getting us from point A to point B as fast as possible. It doesn't have to be that way. We can look at planes as, you know, the journey is over half the fun. In this episode, we're going to look at roads near an airport, so that just in case the engine quits before you reach your, oh, I can turn around and make the field. If the engine quits before you reach that altitude, you'll have a road in front of you, hopefully. In my RV-12 here, I can make the runway if I'm about 500 feet AGL. But that's just enough. So I really am raising my personal minimums to 700 feet. Let's look at the roads around Noss Field, the airport where I'm based here. It's spelled G-N-O-S-S, and some people say Gnoss. And this is where we park our club airplane. So here we have a map of Noss Field. in Novato, California, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge, about maybe 15 miles or so at the top of San Pablo Bay. We're looking north, so this is runway 31, and if you're coming in the other way, you'd be on runway 13. So, if you're taking off on runway 31, you'll notice that you're surrounded by a lot of marsh. That makes for a pretty rough landing. This looks like a road right here, but it's actually a railroad track. So that would be pretty rough. There is a dirt road running out this way, and there are some dirt roads over here in what looks to be some sort of a quarry. However, Highway 101, right there, 101 is just to the left. So if after liftoff you start bearing left, you'll be right about here by the time you reach the end of the runway, and you can almost glide right to 101. Of course, you've got to make your way in between the cars that'll already be there. Now, if you're taking off on 13, what I like to do is right after the end of 13, there is this road here. It is a service road that goes out to a group of antennae. Here they are, 1, 2, 3, 4 antennas. You can't see them, even if I tilt the screen, you still can't see them. So, but that service road runs all the way out to here, and it's a great opportunity should you need it. If you go beyond that service road and you're too far south to turn back to make that road, you do have a neighborhood here with some straight roads here and here, as well as here and here. Something to keep in mind. So it's always good to know what is around your airport. If you take off like most pilots do and just head straight over this marsh and you get out to here, you don't have many options until you make altitude. So at the lower altitudes, remember, if you're only at 2,000 feet, that means you can glide 3 miles. Let's take a look at what 3 miles looks like. So we're going to choose miles here, and we are going to go from here to all the way out to here. That's still 1.3 miles. So if you're at 2,000 feet, you should be able to make this field over here. Let me close this box, and then that closes everything. So there are these fields. Just make sure they are not vineyard fields. You can also pick the roads that go between the fields. Somebody once showed me, I believe this might be a private strip over here, if you can make that. So back to Noss Field. Always know your roads around the runway. Period. So the topics to be covered in future episodes are: how do you follow roads when you're filing a flight plan? How do you land on a road? With the traffic, against the traffic? Do you go to the median? What are the roads in farmlands? And what about wine vineyards? What about mountain roads? Are they too windy, or can you make it work out? Let's take a look at the interstate highway system in the United States, because we'll want to use those for long trips. What if you're flying over a desert? Okay, so you make a great landing in the desert, but now you die of thirst. What emergency equipment should you bring with you? If you're flying along a shoreline, do you want to land on the beach, in the surf, or on that windy road that follows the coastline? What if you have ForeFlight or a similar program in your tablet? You've got a glide circle on it. And you see that there's a runway within that glide circle. How best to negotiate the equipment on your instrument panel? What about landing short of the field versus coming in hot, fast, and overrunning the runway? Which is preferred? Do you have to be over a road, or do you have to just be able to glide to a road? Desert roads, coastal roads, mountain roads. There's a lot to consider. Please subscribe and leave your remarks. Thank you.